I remember the sound of my own breathing. That's what stays with me most, not the screams, not the hum of the torture droids, not even the cold but the sound of air moving in and out of my lungs in that first cell, amplified by the plasteel walls until it became the only proof I still existed. They took everything else. My name, my unit, the color of the sky on the last world I saw as a free person. But they couldn't take that sound. Not yet. I was a soldier once. Not a good one maybe, but a soldier. Male? I believed in something larger than myself, something worth the risk of capture, worth the possibility of this. The rebellion needed people who could slice through Imperial security networks, who understood the architecture of their data fortresses well enough to find the cracks. I was decent at it. Not exceptional. Decent. No, only Shane. That's why I'm still here, I think. Exceptional people die quickly in Imperial custody, publicly, as examples. Decent people disappear. The transport that brought me here, I don't know where here is. Not really, Smelled like recycled air and fear. There were 19 of us in the hold, shackled to the walls in rows. Some were rebels like me. Others were criminals, dissidents, people who'd said the wrong thing in the wrong cantina. One woman kept whispering coordinates under her breath, over and over like a prayer. I never learned what they meant. When we landed, stormtroopers separated us with the casual efficiency of workers sorting cargo. I watched her being led down a different corridor, still whispering. The sound of her voice faded beneath the mechanical hum that seems to fill every Imperial facility, that low thrumming that comes from the walls themselves. From the air circulators, and the power conduits, and the thousands of automated systems that keep these places running without human attention. My cell was 3 meters by 2.5 meters. Whoa. I know because I measured it with my feet during the first week, pacing the perimeter until the numbers meant something, until they gave me a structure to hold on to. The walls were gray plasteel, seamless except for the door, which had no handle on the inside, no visible mechanism at all, and a narrow ventilation grate near the ceiling. The light never changed. It came from panels embedded in the ceiling, a cold white glow that made everything look surgical, sterile. There was a metal shelf that folded down from one wall to serve as a bed, and a waste disposal unit in the corner that activated when approached. That was all. No windows. No sound except what I made myself, and that ever-present hum. They left me there for 6 days before anyone came. I know it was 6 days because I counted my heartbeats. I counted the number of times I breathed. I created elaborate mental structures to keep time, to keep myself anchored to something measurable. Looking back, I think that was the point. The isolation wasn't neglect. It was the first layer of the process, the first step in teaching me that I existed only insofar as they permitted it. Every second of those 6 days was a second they gave me. Every breath was by their allowance. When the door finally opened, I was lying on the metal shelf, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember the face of the woman I'd loved before I joined the rebellion. I couldn't. I could remember facts about her, her height, the color of her eyes, the way she laughed, but I couldn't assemble those facts into a face anymore. The edges had gone soft, blurred by fear and hunger, and the white light that never dimmed. The person who entered wasn't a stormtrooper. He wore the gray uniform of an Imperial Security Bureau officer, tailored and crisp, with the rank insignia of a lieutenant. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30 standard years, with the kind of face that belonged in an administrative office, processing forms and managing schedules. He carried a datapad and nothing else. No weapons. No binders. No. He didn't need them. Prisoner 8742, he said, reading from the datapad. His voice was pleasant, almost warm. You were apprehended on Koyerti, correct? During the raid on the Imperial Communications Relay. I didn't answer. Nawatum, Urigne, Teosiro Daus, Dao. They'd told us in training the rebellion's hasty, inadequate training that silence was the only defense. Give them nothing. Let them work for every scrap. Dot Riu. The lieutenant smiled slightly, as if my silence confirmed something he'd expected. That's fine, he said. We have time. More than enough time. He glanced around the cell with the detached interest of someone evaluating a piece of equipment. Are you comfortable? Is there anything you need? The question was so absurd that I almost laughed. Almost. But something in his tone stopped me. He wasn't mocking me. He genuinely wanted to know, as if my comfort was a factor in some calculation he was running. Water, I said. My voice came out as a rasp. I hadn't spoken in 6 days. He made a note on his data pad. Oh, of course. Standard rations will be provided starting tomorrow. 1 meal per day, delivered at the same time. Consistency helps with orientation. He looked up at me, his expression mild. You'll find things easier if you cooperate. The alternative is considerably less pleasant. He left before I could respond, and the door sealed behind him with a hiss that sounded like escaping air, like something deflating. The finality of it settled over me like a weight. The next day, the door opened briefly, and a tray slid through on a mechanical arm. 1 ration, bar day, wool. 1 cup of water. The water tasted metallic, recycled through systems I didn't want to think about. The ration bar had the texture of compressed dust, and a flavor that wasn't quite anything. I ate it slowly, making it last, knowing it would be the only food until tomorrow. This became the pattern. Dao Di. 1 meal a day. Silence. The unchanging light. New. And every few days the lieutenant would return with his datapad and his pleasant voice, asking questions. They were never the questions I expected. He didn't ask about rebellion bases or supply routes or the names of my commanders. Where to your wall? Instead, he asked about me, where I grew up. What my parents did? Whether I had siblings. What I studied before the war. He listened to my answers, when I gave them, with the focused attention of someone genuinely interested, making notes, occasionally asking follow-up questions that revealed how much they already knew. You trained as a communications technician on Coruscant, he said during one session, reading from his datapad. Under the old Republic systems. That's rare. Most of those programs were discontinued after the transition. He looked up at me. Did you support the transition? The reorganization into the Empire? I stared at the wall behind him. Don't engage. Don't give them anything. It's a simple question, he continued, his tone still pleasant. Many people did support it. The Republic was failing, corrupt, inefficient. The Empire brought order, stability. There's no shame in having believed that. I didn't ask for order, I said. The words came out before I could stop them. He smiled. No? What'd you ask for? I didn't answer. He made another note. We'll continue this tomorrow. But tomorrow became 3 days later, then 5 days, then 8-2. The pattern broke. The meal deliveries became irregular, sometimes twice in what felt like a day, sometimes nothing for what might have been days. I lost my careful count. No. The isolation expanded to fill all the space in my head, and the lieutenant's visits became the only landmarks in an endless gray landscape. I started looking forward to them. Started preparing answers to questions he might ask. Started thinking about what I could say that would make him stay longer. That would extend those brief moments when I wasn't alone with the hum and the light and my own breathing. This, I learned later, was also part of the process. Humans are social creatures. We need interaction, the way we need food and water. Deprive us of it long enough, and we'll seek it from anyone, even our captors. Especially our captors. The Empire understands this. They've refined it into a science, measured it, optimized it. They know exactly how long to leave someone alone before the isolation becomes a kind of pain, and exactly when to offer the relief of human contact. They know how to make you grateful for their presence, how to make you compliant. I don't know how long I was in that first cell. Weeks, certainly. Maybe months. Time lost its meaning, became something elastic and unreliable. But eventually, the lieutenant stopped coming. Instead, 2 stormtroopers arrived, pulled me to my feet, and marched me down a series of identical corridors to a new location. The interrogation room was larger than my cell, maybe 6 meters square, with the same white light and gray walls. In the center was a chair, restraints built into the arms and legs. Medical equipment lined one wall, 8 monitors, injection systems, devices whose purpose I couldn't identify. A black sphere hung from the ceiling above the chair, studded with sensors, and what looked like manipulator arms. An interrogation droid? I'd heard about them. Everyone in the rebellion had heard about them. Please sit, a new voice said. Not the lieutenant. This was a woman, older, with the insignia of a major. She stood beside the chair, one hand resting on its back, her expression neutral. This will be easier if you cooperate. I sat because the stormtroopers were already moving me toward the chair, because resistance would only delay the inevitable. The restraints closed around my wrists and ankles with mechanical precision, tightening until I couldn't move more than a few centimeters in any direction. The major walked to the control panel on the wall and began activating systems. The droid descended until it was level with my face, close enough that I could see my reflection in its curved black surface, distorted and small. One of its arms extended, ending in a hypodermic needle that gleamed in the white light. We're going to ask you some questions, the major said, her tone as matter-of-fact as if she were describing a routine medical procedure. The droid will monitor your physiological responses. It will know if you're lying. It will know if you're withholding information. I strongly advise complete honesty. The needle moved closer. I felt the cold pressure of it against my neck, then the sharp sting of penetration. Whatever they injected burned. As it entered my bloodstream, spreading heat through my chest and up into my skull, my vision blurred at the edges, and sounds became sharp, too clear, like someone had turned up the volume on reality. What is your name? The major asked. I told her. Not the alias I'd been using with the rebellion. My real name. The one I'd been born with. It spilled out of me before I could even think to resist. Good. Where were you born? I told her that too. Who recruited you into the rebellion? No, you assume the rebellion. The questions continued, each one pulling answers from me like a physician extracting shrapnel. I tried to resist. I formed lies in my mind, prepared false information, but when I opened my mouth, only the truth came out, precise and complete. The drug stripped away my ability to deceive, left me helpless and exposed. The droid recorded everything, its sensors tracking my heart rate, my breathing, the electrical activity in my brain, building a comprehensive map of who I was and what I knew. I don't remember how long the session lasted. Time became meaningless again, but in a different way. Not the slow, empty meaninglessness of the cell, but a compressed, frantic blur where hours might have been minutes and minutes might have been hours. When they finally deactivated the droid and released the restraints, I couldn't stand. The stormtroopers had to carry me back to my cell. I lay on the metal shelf, staring at the ceiling, trying to inventory what I'd told them. Names, locations, Maui czars, codes, everything. I'd given them everything. The realization sat in my chest like a physical weight, pressing down on my lungs. People would die because of what I'd said. Operations would be compromised. Cells would be captured. Hundreds summoned to be captured. All because I couldn't keep silent under the droid's cold examination. The lieutenant returned 2 days later. He sat on the floor of my cell, an unexpected gesture, one that put him at my level rather than standing over me, and regarded me with something that looked like sympathy. "You shouldn't blame yourself," he said quietly. "No one resists the I2 effectively. That's not weakness, that's biology. The rebellion knows this. They accept the risk when they recruit people. Your friends understand what happened here." "They're not my friends anymore," I said. My voice sounded hollow, scraped raw. "They're dead because of me. Some of them perhaps, but most will have been extracted by now. Your organization isn't completely incompetent." He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. "The information you provided was useful, certainly, but it's not as catastrophic as you believe. These things are factored into their operational security." I looked at him, trying to understand why he was telling me this, why he was trying to make me feel better. "I'm curious about something," he continued. "Why did you join them?" "The rebellion. You had a good position with Republic Planetary Communications. You would have transitioned smoothly into the Imperial system. All right. You weren't political, as far as we can tell. No record of dissent or activism. So why risk everything?" The question hung in the air between us. I thought about not answering. But what did it matter now? What did any of it matter? "I saw what you did on Gorman," I said. He nodded slowly, recognition in his eyes. "The massacre. You were there?" "No, but I knew people who were. Friends from the academy. They were protesting the tariffs, peacefully, and Tarkin brought a ship down on top of them. Killed hundreds. And the Empire called it an accident. Called them insurgents. I watched the official reports rewrite what happened in real time, and I couldn't." I trailed off, unsure how to finish. "You couldn't accept the lie," the lieutenant said. "I understand. That's admirable, in its way. Dangerous, but admirable." He stood, brushing dust from his uniform. "The problem is that your understanding is incomplete. Grand Moff Tarkin makes decisions at a level most people can't comprehend. He sees patterns across entire sectors, factors that involve billions of lives. What looks like cruelty from your perspective is often necessity from his. The Empire must maintain order, and order sometimes requires difficult choices." "Murdering protesters isn't a difficult choice," I said. "It's murder, is it?" He tilted his head slightly, considering. How many people would have died in the riots that followed if those protests had continued? How many trade routes would have been disrupted, leading to shortages, starvation, economic collapse? Tarkin prevented that. He made the hard calculation, accepted the moral burden, and saved more lives than he took. That's leadership. Dottening, so more to monsieur emo, also, when stressada. No review. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be pointless. Master Dan Joe. The lieutenant moved toward the door, then paused. "You'll have another session with the droid tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until we've extracted everything of value. Then, we'll decide what to do with you. I hope you'll use this time to think about what I've said. The Empire isn't your enemy. Your enemy is chaos. We're all fighting the same war, whether you realize it or not." The door sealed behind him, and I was alone again with the hum and the light. The interrogations continued. They blurred together into a single extended nightmare of needles and questions, and that black sphere hanging above me, always watching, always recording. Between sessions, I existed in my cell, eating when they fed me, sleeping when exhaustion overcame fear, trying not to think about what I was revealing. But something changed after that conversation with the lieutenant. The questions became different, less tactical, more philosophical. They asked about my beliefs, my motivations, what I thought the galaxy should look like. They asked if I understood why the Empire did what it did, if I could see the logic behind their actions. And with the drug in my system, I answered honestly, exposing the doubts I'd never admitted even to myself. Did I really believe the rebellion could win? Did you? No. Why? Not really. Did I think my actions would make a meaningful difference? I wanted to, but probably not. Did I understand that the Empire had brought unprecedented stability to a galaxy that had been tearing itself apart? Yes, I understood that. I just couldn't accept the cost. The major who conducted most of the interrogations seemed particularly interested in this last point. The cost, she repeated, making notes. You acknowledge the benefits but reject the methods. That's a common position among educated dissidents. You want the outcome without the sacrifice required to achieve it. I want the outcome without mass murder, I said, the words thick and slow from the drugs. Semantics, she replied. Every government in history has used force to maintain order. The only difference is scale. The Empire operates on a galactic scale, so its methods must match. You're simply uncomfortable with seeing the mechanism clearly. Maybe she was right. I don't know. The drugs made it hard to think clearly, and after enough sessions, the questions started to feel like conversations, like genuine attempts to understand rather than extract. I caught myself agreeing with things the major said, nodding along to arguments that would have enraged me weeks earlier. The isolation, the drugs, the constant pressure, they were changing how I thought, reshaping my understanding of the world. This is what they do. This is how the Empire breaks people. Not with pain alone, though there was plenty of that when I was uncooperative, but with time, with isolation, with the slow grinding pressure of having your reality questioned over and over until you're no longer sure what you believe. After what might have been 2 months, I'd long since lost count. The interrogations stopped. The lieutenant returned to my cell and informed me that I'd been processed completely. All useful information had been extracted. Now they would determine my disposition. There are several options, he explained, standing in the doorway rather than entering. Maintaining distance now, I noticed. Professional again. No, until execution, which is standard for rebel operatives. Penal labor on Kessel or one of the other correctional facilities. Or in rare cases, rehabilitation and reintegration. Rehabilitation, I repeated. The word felt strange in my mouth. It's not common, he admitted. Most rebels are too committed to their ideology, but we believe you joined for emotional reasons rather than ideological ones. You were angry about Gorman. You wanted to do something, to feel like you mattered. That's understandable, but you're not a fanatic. You can learn to see things differently. You want to turn me, I said. It wasn't a question. We want to salvage you. There's a difference. He consulted his datapad. Your technical skills are valuable. The Empire needs people who understand advanced communication systems. We could use someone like you, assuming you can demonstrate genuine cooperation. And if I refuse, then you'll be transferred to Kessel, where you'll spend the rest of your life mining spice in the dark, or we'll execute you. The choice is yours. He left me alone to think about it, alone with the hum, and the light, and the weight of that choice. I want to say, I refused. I want to say, I told them to execute me, that I died with my principles intact. But that's not what happened. I was tired. So tired. Tired of the cell and the interrogations, and the crushing loneliness. Tired of being afraid. And some part of me, the part they'd carefully nurtured during all those sessions, wondered if they might be right. If the Empire, for all its cruelty, might actually be the only thing preventing galactic collapse. When the lieutenant returned, I agreed to their rehabilitation program. They moved me to a different facility, a place that looked less like a prison and more like a training academy. I had a larger cell, they called it quarters, with an actual bed and a small desk. I was allowed to exercise in a communal area, though always under supervision. and I attended classes. The classes were the strangest part. They were educational, covering Imperial history, political philosophy, systems management. The instructors were patient and articulate, presenting their material like university professors rather than propagandists. They acknowledged the Empire's harsh methods, but framed them as regrettable necessities in a galaxy prone to chaos. They showed us data carefully selected, I'm sure, but still convincing demonstrating how Imperial rule had reduced piracy, stabilized trade routes, and prevented the kind of system-wide conflicts that had plagued the Clone Wars era. And slowly, over months of classes, and controlled social interaction and regular meetings with psychological counselors, I felt my resistance eroding. Not disappearing, but softening. Becoming something more complex than the simple anger that had driven me to join the rebellion. I met others in the program. Former rebels, dissidents, people who'd been broken and reshaped. Some seemed genuinely convinced by the Empire's arguments. Others were just surviving, saying what they needed to say to avoid Kessel or execution. I couldn't tell which category I fell into. Maybe both. After 6 months, they gave me a test. A practical evaluation of my technical skills and my loyalty. They brought me to a communications hub and asked me to analyze its security protocols, identify vulnerabilities, and recommend improvements. I did the work efficiently, professionally, the way I'd done countless similar tasks before. When I finished, the Lieutenant who'd been overseeing my rehabilitation the entire time, reviewed my analysis and nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent work," he said. "This is exactly the kind of expertise we need." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now you start working for us officially. You'll be assigned to a communication security team monitoring for rebel intrusion attempts. The pay is adequate, the conditions are reasonable, and you'll be contributing to galactic stability." He paused. "Ew. Unless you're having second thoughts." I shook my head. What would second thoughts accomplish now? I'd already compromised. Already given them what they wanted. Refusing at this point would just be pointless defiance. They assigned me to an orbital station above Anaxes, a massive Imperial Navy facility that coordinated fleet communications across several sectors. My job was to maintain security protocols, identify potential breaches, and assist with counterintelligence operations against rebel infiltration. I shared quarters with 3 other technicians, ate in a communal mess hall, and spent my days staring at data streams, looking for patterns that might indicate rebel activity. It was, in many ways, a normal job. The people I worked with were professional and competent. Some had been loyal Imperials their entire careers. Others, like me, had come from less conventional backgrounds. We didn't talk much about the past. That seemed to be an unspoken rule. Whatever had brought us here was irrelevant. What mattered was the work. And the work was engaging, I had to admit. The rebels were clever, constantly adapting their encryption and routing methods. Tracking them required real skill, real intelligence. There was a satisfaction in it, in solving those puzzles, in outmaneuvering their attempts to hide. I told myself I was just doing technical work, that what happened with the information I gathered wasn't my responsibility. The compartmentalization helped. It made things easier. But sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I would think about the people on the other end of those data streams. The rebels I was helping the Empire find. I'd been one of them, not that long ago. I knew what would happen when Imperial forces located them based on information I provided. Interrogation. Imprisonment. Dull. Execution. The same machinery that had broken me would break them. I told myself they'd made their choice, the same way I'd made mine. That they understood the risks. That I was just surviving, doing what I had to do. The rationalizations came easily. After all those months of rehabilitation, the Empire had taught me well. 6 months into my assignment, our team identified a rebel cell operating on Lothal, a small outer rim world. that had been increasingly restless under Imperial occupation. We'd intercepted encrypted communications, suggesting the cell was planning to sabotage a local Tabana gas refinery. The intelligence was passed up the chain, and within 2 days, the ESB had raided their location. The Lieutenant now a captain, promoted for his successful rehabilitation work, stopped by my station to congratulate me personally. "Your analysis was instrumental," he said. "The cell has been neutralized, and the refinery is secure." "Well done." "How many?" I asked before I could stop myself. "How many what?" "How many people did they arrest?" He consulted his datapad. 17 confirmed rebels. 3 were killed resisting capture. The rest are being processed. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Does that bother you?" "No," I said. "Just curious about the scope." He nodded, accepting the answer, and moved on. But the number stayed with me. 17 people. 14 now in Imperial custody, facing interrogation, facing everything I'd faced. Because of my work. New and solar. Because I'd been good at my job. That night, I lay in my bunk and tried to remember why I joined the rebellion in the first place. Gorman. Die. The massacre. The casual way the Empire had killed hundreds, and called it justified. But now I understood the logic behind it, the calculations that made such actions necessary. The Empire had taught me to see from their perspective. To understand that order required sacrifice. I'd been rehabilitated successfully, except I hadn't. No, you... Well, not really. Because late at night in the dark, I still felt sick about those 14 people. Still saw their faces in my imagination, contorted with fear as stormtroopers dragged them away. Still heard their screams during interrogation, even though I'd never actually heard them. The rehabilitation had given me the tools to rationalize, to compartmentalize, to function. But it hadn't erased what I knew. It hadn't made me believe. It had just made me complicit. The work continued. More rebel cells identified. More operations disrupted. More people arrested or killed. I got better at not thinking about it, at focusing on the technical challenges and ignoring the human cost. The other technicians helped with that. None of them seemed troubled by what our work enabled. Or, if they were, they hid it as well as I did. Then, 18 months into my assignment, something changed. I was analyzing communication patterns from a cell operating near Yavin, looking for behavioral signatures that might reveal their location, when I noticed something unusual. One of their encryption keys had a distinctive structure, a specific way of generating pseudo-random sequences that I recognized. I'd used that same method during my time with the rebellion. In fact, I'd taught it to 3 other people during a training session on Dantawan, years ago. One of them was still alive, still operational, and I was about to help the Empire find them. I sat at my terminal, staring at the data, feeling something crack open inside my chest. The person on the other end of this transmission wasn't an abstraction. Wasn't a number in a report. It was someone I'd known. Someone I'd trained. Someone who'd trusted me. I could file the report, pass the intelligence up the chain, do my job the way I'd been doing it for 18 months. How? The Empire would raid their location, capture or kill them, and I would receive another commendation for my excellent work. Or I could do nothing. Claim the lead was inconclusive. Give them time to move, to disappear back into the crowds and dust of the galaxy. It would be a small act of defiance. Insignificant in the grand scheme, but it would be something. I sat there for 20 minutes, paralyzed by the choice. Both options felt impossible. Both felt like betrayal, of the person I used to be, or of the person I'd been forced to become. In the end, I filed the report. I told myself I had no choice, that refusing would only expose me, that my survival depended on continued compliance. all the rationalizations I'd learned, all the justifications the Empire had taught me. The raid happened 3 days later. 7 rebels killed, 5 captured. I didn't let myself check whether the person I'd known was among them. Wasn't he? It didn't matter. Well, I'd done what the Empire required. I'd proven my loyalty. But something had broken that couldn't be repaired. I'd crossed a line I couldn't rationalize away, betrayed someone specific rather than some abstract notion of the rebellion. The compartmentalization stopped working. Every analysis I did, every pattern I identified, I saw the faces of people I'd known. Every success felt like another piece of myself being carved away. I started making mistakes. Small ones at first, missed connections, incomplete reports, analysis that took longer than it should. My supervisor noticed and called me in for a review. Was everything all right? Was I having difficulties adjusting? Did I need to speak with a counselor? I told him everything was fine. Why? Just tired. Just needed rest. He accepted this and increased my workload, as if staying busy would help. The mistakes continued. Got worse. I knew I was sabotaging myself, but I couldn't seem to stop. Part of me wanted to be caught, wanted the facade to collapse so I wouldn't have to keep pretending. Another part was terrified of what would happen when the Empire realized I was no longer reliable. The decision was made for me. 6 weeks later, ASB agents arrived at my station without warning, placed me in binders, and escorted me off the facility. No explanation. I knew I wasn't. No charges. Just the mechanical efficiency of Imperial security doing its work. They brought me to a detention center on Coruscant, a black tower that rose from the city planet's surface like a scar. I was processed, biometrics, inventory, classification, and assigned to a cell. Not the same kind of cell as before. This one was meant for long-term detention, with multiple bunks and space for 6 prisoners. 3 others were already there when I arrived. What do you do? One of them asked. He was older, maybe 50, with the worn look of someone who'd been detained for years. I worked for them, I said. Then, I stopped being useful. He nodded like this made perfect sense. Oh, that'll do it. They don't waste resources on anyone who can't contribute. You'll be here until they decide whether to execute you or ship you to a labor camp. How long? For me, 4 years so far. They keep saying they'll make a decision, but he shrugged. I think they just forgot I exist. That became my reality. Existing in a cell with 3 other prisoners, waiting for a decision that might never come. We were fed regularly, not well, but enough to maintain us. We were allowed exercise in a small courtyard for 1 hour every 3 days. The rest of the time we existed in that cell, sleeping or talking or staring at walls. The others had similar stories. One had been an Imperial officer who'd reported his superior for corruption. The superior had powerful friends, and the corruption charges were reversed, declared fabrications. Another had been a cargo inspector who'd discovered a smuggling operation run by local Imperial officials and been detained when he tried to report it. The third had simply been in the wrong place during a raid, arrested by stormtroopers who never bothered to verify his identity. None of us were political prisoners exactly. We were administrative casualties, people who'd gotten caught in the machinery of the Empire's bureaucracy and been ground down by its indifference. Our cases were pending, always pending, waiting for someone to review files that might have been lost or misplaced, or simply deprioritized into irrelevance. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The cell became the entire universe. I stopped counting time. It didn't matter anymore. We developed routines to stay sane. The former officer, his name was Vena, taught us Imperial military tactics, drawing diagrams on the floor with pieces of torn cloth. The cargo inspector, Dalla, told stories about the worlds he'd visited, describing them in such detail that we could almost see them. The man who'd been arrested by mistake, Toll, led us in exercises, maintaining our physical conditioning, even though there was no practical reason to do so anymore. And I told them about the rebellion, about what I'd done before my capture, during my rehabilitation, and after, about the choices I'd made and the people I'd betrayed. They listened without judgment, because what was the point of judgment here? We were all complicit in something. We'd all survived by compromising. Do you think they won? Toll asked one day, after I'd finished describing a raid I'd helped the Empire plan. The rebels you worked with. Do you think they're winning? No, I said. They're dying. Slowly. But the Empire is too vast, too entrenched. Individual cells might succeed. Might blow up a ship or steal some plans. But it doesn't change anything. The system is too big to fight. Then what's the point? Dalla asked. Why did you join them if you knew they'd lose? I thought about this for a long time. Because someone has to remember that this isn't normal, I said finally. Someone has to refuse, even if it's futile. Otherwise, we're just accepting it. Accepting that this is how things should be. Then laughed a bitter sound. And look where that got you. Got all of us. We refused in one way or another, and now we're trapped in a cell, waiting to die or disappear. The Empire doesn't care about our principles. It doesn't care about anything except its own continuation. He was right, of course. But I couldn't bring myself to regret joining the rebellion, even now. Yes, I'd been captured. Yes, I'd been broken and turned and used against the people I'd fought beside. Yes, I was probably going to die in this cell or somewhere worse. But for a brief time, I'd been part of something that said no to the Empire. That mattered, even if it changed nothing. The routines continued. The weeks blurred. Sometimes guards would come and remove one of us for questioning. Never me. I'd already been processed completely, and returned them hours later, bruised and silent. Sometimes new prisoners would arrive, stay for days or weeks, then disappear again. The cell was a way station in a larger system of detention and processing that stretched across the entire galaxy. One day, maybe 8 months into my detention, they came for Toll. 2 stormtroopers entered, called his designation number, and escorted him out. He looked back once as he left. His expression resigned. We never saw him again. The next day, they brought someone new. A young woman, maybe 25, with the vacant look of someone who'd been recently interrogated. She sat in Toll's bunk and stared at the wall for 6 hours without speaking. Eventually, Dalla asked her name. She didn't respond. You asked what she'd been arrested for. Nothing. It took 3 days before she spoke, and when she did, it was in a flat monotone. I helped refugees escape from Wobani. The Empire found out. They wanted names. I gave them names. She laughed. A sound without humor. Couldn't help myself. The drugs made me tell them everything. And now those people are dead or here or somewhere worse, and I can't even remember their faces anymore. I recognized what she was describing. Recognized the guilt and the numbness, and the way trauma erased memory. She'd been through the same process I had, the same breaking. And like me, she was now waiting for a decision that might never come. Suspended in this limbo between punishment and release. It's not your fault, I told her. No one resists the interrogation droids. They know that. The people you worked with, they understood the risk. She looked at me for the first time, her eyes hollow. Does that make it better? Does understanding the risk make them less dead? I didn't have an answer for that. Her name was Kessa. Over the following weeks, she gradually emerged from her silence, joining our routines, our conversations. She'd been a medic on Wobani, treating prisoners in the labor camps there. She'd seen what the Empire did to people, the casual brutality, the deliberate degradation, the way human beings were processed into units of labor and then discarded when they broke. She couldn't watch it anymore. Started helping people escape. Wah. Small numbers, never enough to be noticed. Until she was. The worst part, she said one night, her voice quiet in the darkness, is that I understand why they do it. The Empire. I spent months in those camps, seeing the efficiency of it. How the system processes thousands of prisoners with minimal resources, minimal waste. It's elegant in a horrible way. They've optimized suffering. No. Then shifted in his bunk. No. That's what the Empire does best. Takes something monstrous and makes it systematic, rational. Makes it feel inevitable. Is it though? Dalla asked. Inevitable? Ow. Does it matter? I said. Inevitable or not, it's here. It's real. And we're inside it. The conversation died after that. What else was there to say? Time continued its slow dissolution. Seasons changed outside. I could tell because the temperature in the cell fluctuated slightly, became warmer during coruscant summer months, cooler in winter. Years might have passed. I stopped, trying to track it. Prisoners came and went. Some stayed for days, some for months. We heard rumors sometimes, fragments of news from the outside. The Death Star had been destroyed. We learned this from a guard who was angry about it, ranting about rebel terrorists while delivering our meal. The Empire had retaliated by destroying Alderaan, we heard later, though the details were unclear. Billions dead. An entire world erased. I tried to feel something about this. Horror. Dati. Niwasime. Grief. Da. Anything. But I'd been in the cell too long. The numbers were too large to comprehend. Billions of people became just another abstraction, like the rebels I'd helped capture, like the refugees Kessa had failed to save. The mind can only hold so much tragedy before it becomes noise. Then died in his sleep one night. We woke up and he was just gone, his body cold in the bunk. The guards removed him without ceremony, without explanation. They brought someone new the next day. The cycle continued. Dalla lasted another year, maybe two, before something broke inside him. He stopped eating, stopped participating in our routines. Just lay in his bunk, staring at nothing, until his body gave out. The guards took him away too. Nasum go. Again, someone new arrived to fill the space. Kessa and I remained. The long-term residents of a cell that processed people like cargo. We stopped talking much. What was there to say that we hadn't already said 1,000 times? We existed beside each other, two survivors of the same slow catastrophe, waiting for an end that never came. Sometimes I thought about my time with the rebellion. The brief period when I believed I could make a difference, when I'd thought my skills and my anger could matter against something as vast as the Empire. It felt like a story about someone else now. A naive person who hadn't yet learned how thoroughly the system could break you, how completely it could absorb your resistance and turn it into compliance. Other times I thought about my work after rehabilitation. The months I'd spent helping the Empire hunt rebels, convincing myself I was just doing technical work, just surviving. Those memories sat heavier. I'd had agency then. No. I'd made choices, even if those choices were constrained by fear and indoctrination. I couldn't blame the drugs or the torture for what I'd done during those months. I'd been complicit, willingly. And now I was here, forgotten in a cell, neither punished nor released. Just stored. Like the Empire couldn't quite decide what to do with me, and had simply shelved the question indefinitely. One day, I don't know how long I'd been detained, years certainly, an ESB officer came to the cell. Not for questioning. He actually entered, stood in the center of our small space and consulted a datapad. "Prisoner 8742, he said, reading my original designation from when I was first captured. "You've been reviewed for transfer to a labor facility. Given your technical background and acceptable behavior during detention, you're being reassigned to a communications relay station on Karita. You'll serve a 10-year term, after which your case will be reviewed for possible release." I stared at him, trying to process this. After years of waiting, suddenly there was a decision, a time frame. An end that I could actually conceptualize. When? I asked. Transport leaves tomorrow. Prepare your effects. I didn't have effects. None of us did. But I nodded, and he left. Kessa looked at me from her bunk. 10 years, she said. That's something. That's better than this. Is it? When? I asked. Labor facility. They're known for comfortable conditions. No, but it's not forever. It's countable. She smiled slightly, the first time I'd seen her smile in months. You'll survive it. You're good at surviving. The next morning, guards came and escorted me out of the cell. I looked back once at Kessa, still lying in her bunk, and wondered if she'd still be there in 10 years when my term ended. If she'd still be alive? If anyone would ever make a decision about her case? Or if she'd just remain in that cell until she died like Ven and Dalla? The transport to Karita took 3 days. I was shackled with 20 other prisoners, all of us being transferred to various labor facilities. No one spoke much. We'd all been detained long enough to learn that conversation was just wasted energy. The labor facility was exactly what I expected. Gray prefabricated buildings arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Blah. Fences topped with razor wire. Guard towers at regular intervals. Everything designed for maximum efficiency and minimum comfort. DOS. We were processed. New identification numbers, new classifications, new uniforms and assigned to work details. My technical background meant I was assigned to communications, maintenance rather than manual labor. 8 hours a day. I worked on the relay equipment that connected this facility to the larger Imperial network. It was similar to what I'd done on Anaxis, except now I was a prisoner doing forced labor rather than a rehabilitated employee receiving pay. The work was mindless, but exhausting. The equipment was old, poorly maintained, constantly failing. We worked in teams of 6, supervised by a bored technician who'd occasionally check our progress, but mostly just sat reading reports. The conditions were barely tolerable. The building was too hot in summer, too cold in winter, and the air filtration was inadequate, leaving everything coated in fine dust. But it was countable. 10 years, 3,650 days, give or take. I could count that. And could track it. No. Could imagine an end. Amy. I settled into the routine. Work. Die. Eat. Eat. Sleep. Dull. The meals were better than in detention. Actual food rather than ration bars, though still minimal. We slept in barracks, 50 prisoners to a room, on narrow bunks stacked 3 high. Privacy was non-existent. Conflict was constant, but usually minor. People arguing over bunk assignments, theft of personal items, the usual friction of too many people in too small a space. The other prisoners were a mix. Some were political rebels, dissidents, people who'd said or done the wrong thing. Others were criminal smugglers, thieves, people who'd violated Imperial commerce regulations. A few, like me, had been Imperial employees who'd failed in some way, who'd stopped being useful and been reclassified as labor. I kept to myself mostly. Didn't make friends. Didn't share my history. Just worked and counted days. But isolation was impossible in a facility like this. People talked. Stories emerged. And slowly over months, I learned about the others in my work detail. There was Ren, a former pilot who'd refused an order to fire on a civilian transport. He'd been court-martialed, sentenced to 15 years. Jas, a young woman who'd been arrested during a protest on Lothal. She'd just been walking past when the stormtroopers swept the area, and somehow she'd ended up charged with sedition. 7 years. Mikkel, an accountant who'd discovered embezzlement in his department and reported it. The embezzler had connections. Mikkel got 10 years for falsifying records, a charge invented entirely to silence him. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been processed by the same machinery that had broken me. And all of us were serving time not because we were dangerous, but because we were inconvenient. Because the Empire found it easier to lock us away than to acknowledge its own dysfunction. You know what's crazy? Jas said one day, while we were repairing a malfunctioning antenna array. My brother is a stormtrooper, stationed on Scarif. He believes in the Empire completely, thinks it's bringing order to the galaxy, and I'm here serving 7 years for walking down the wrong street at the wrong time. Have you told him? I asked. Tried. Sent messages through official channels. They came back marked undeliverable. I don't think he even knows I'm here. Or maybe he does, and he's chosen not to acknowledge it. Either way. She shrugged. Here. The Empire takes care of its loyal servants, right? As long as you stay loyal. That was the lesson everyone in the facility had learned. Loyalty to the Empire meant nothing if you became inconvenient. All nudge. If you saw something you shouldn't see, if you reported something they didn't want reported, if you simply failed to perform adequately, you could be discarded just as easily as any rebel or criminal. There was no protection in compliance, only in being useful. I thought about this often during those years. About how the system I'd worked for after my rehabilitation, the system I'd rationalized and justified, treated its own people as disposable. The rebellion had never pretended otherwise. They'd always acknowledged the risks, the likelihood of capture or death. But the Empire wrapped its brutality in promises of order and stability, convinced its servants they were safe as long as they obeyed, then discarded them the moment they faltered. Years passed. I counted them meticulously, marking time on a scrap of fabric I kept hidden in my bunk. 1 year. 2 years. 3. The work continued, endless and numbing. People finished their sentences and were released, or so we were told. We never saw them again, never knew if they actually left, or were just transferred somewhere worse. New prisoners arrived to replace them, and the cycle continued. 4 years. 5 dipped. My hands developed permanent calluses from working with the equipment. My hearing degraded from constant exposure to electromagnetic interference. My back ached from the cramped positions we had to work in to access the relay components. But I was still alive. Still counting. Rumors reached us occasionally from the outside. The Empire had built a second Death Star. The Emperor himself was overseeing its construction. The rebellion was growing, becoming bolder, striking at more significant targets. Some of the newer prisoners had fought at Hoth or Endor, or knew people who had. The stories they told suggested something was changing in the galaxy. Some shift in the balance that even the Empire couldn't completely suppress. But it felt distant, irrelevant. The galaxy could burn or be reborn, and we'd still be here, maintaining communications equipment for a labor facility that would continue operating regardless of who won the war. 6 years. 7, 9, or 8. I was repairing a transmitter coupling when I heard the news. One of the guards, usually silent, usually professional, was talking to another, his voice carrying across the work bay. Did you hear? The Emperor is dead, Vader too. The Death Star was destroyed. The other guard shushed him, glanced around nervously. You're not supposed to discuss that. It's not confirmed. It's confirmed. The fleet's in chaos. Half the admirals are fighting over who's in charge. This is big. This is everything. They moved away before I could hear more. But the news spread through the facility within hours, whispered between prisoners during meals, during work, during the brief moments when guards weren't paying attention. The Emperor was dead. The rebellion had won some kind of victory. The Empire was fracturing. No one knew what it meant for us. Would we be released? Would new management just continue operating the facility under a different flag? Would the chaos lead to our executions, eliminating witnesses and loose ends? The uncertainty was worse than the routine had been. For 3 weeks, nothing changed. We worked. We ate. We slept. The guards seemed nervous, more prone to violence when challenged, but the fundamental operation of the facility continued. Then, suddenly, they were gone. We woke one morning to silence. No guards at the barracks doors. No supervisors at the work sites. The command building was empty, doors standing open, equipment abandoned. The entire Imperial staff had evacuated during the night without announcement or explanation. The prisoners emerged cautiously, expecting traps, expecting this to be some kind of test. But the facility was genuinely abandoned. The gates were unlocked. The weapon racks were empty. Even the food stores had been ransacked, though enough remained to sustain us for a few weeks. What do we do? Someone asked. Hundreds of prisoners, standing in the yard, suddenly free, but with no plan, no resources, no idea what waited outside the fences. We leave, Ren said. We get as far from here as possible before whoever takes over this sector decides to reoccupy the facility. But it wasn't that simple. We were on Karita, deep in Imperial space. The nearest city was 60 kilometers away through mountainous terrain. We had no transportation, no money, no identification that wasn't marked as prisoners. Most of us were malnourished, unhealthy from years of inadequate conditions. And the galaxy outside was in chaos, with Imperial remnants and emerging new Republic forces fighting over territory. Some left immediately, just started walking toward the horizon. Others stayed, afraid that leaving would somehow make things worse, that they'd be shot as escapees. I stayed for 3 days, helping organize what remained, distributing food, treating injuries, trying to establish some basic order among people who'd been controlled for so long that freedom felt like a trap. On the 4th day, ships appeared. Not Imperial. The insignia was unfamiliar, some kind of provisional government symbol, I learned later. They landed in the facility yard, and soldiers emerged. Not stormtroopers. These wore mismatched armor and carried rebel equipment, but they moved with military discipline. Their commander, a Sullustan woman with the rank of lieutenant, addressed us through a portable speaker. The facility is being decommissioned. You're all free to go. We'll provide transportation to the nearest population center, where you can register with the new government and receive assistance. Free to go. The words felt unreal. They loaded us onto transports, hundreds of former prisoners crammed into cargo holds, and flew us to a city on Karita's southern continent. They gave us basic supplies, food, water, a small amount of credits, and directed us to a processing center where the New Republic was attempting to document everyone displaced by the war. The processing took hours. They asked for my name, my original homeworld, my history. I told them the truth, or most of it. Captured by the Empire, interrogated, rehabilitated, and forced to work against the rebellion. Imprisoned when I became unreliable. Transferred to labor facility. They recorded all of it without judgment, just documentation. You're eligible for repatriation assistance, the clerk told me. We can arrange transport to any New Republic system, or you can stay here and apply for residency. Your choice. My choice. I hadn't had real choices in years. Why? The concept felt foreign. What about accountability? I asked. For what I did while working for them. The rebels I helped them capture. The clerk looked up from his datapad, his expression tired. The new government is focusing on major war criminals, officers who ordered massacres, administrators who ran the camps, people who made policy decisions, technical workers who were coerced. He shrugged. No. There are millions like you. We don't have the resources to prosecute everyone who survived by compromising. If you want to report your actions formally, I can direct you to the appropriate office. But honestly, no one's looking for you. And worry. I thought about this. About the people I'd betrayed, the information I'd provided, the 14 prisoners captured on Lothal because of my analysis. About whether accountability meant confession, punishment, or simply remembering what I'd done. I'll report it, I said finally. For the record, even if nothing comes of it. He directed me to another office, where I spent 3 more hours giving a detailed statement of my work for the Empire after rehabilitation. The official taking my statement seemed bored, like he'd heard variations of this story hundreds of times already. When I finished, he thanked me, said the information would be filed, and that was all. No trial, no punishment, just documentation that would probably sit in an archive forever, unread and unexamined. I took the repatriation transport to Coruscant because I didn't know where else to go. My homeworld had been destroyed years ago. Casualties of the war, I learned. The life I'd had before joining the rebellion no longer existed. Everyone I'd known was dead or scattered across the galaxy. Coruscant was transformed. The Imperial insignias were being torn down, replaced with new Republic symbols. The Black Tower, where I'd been detained for years, was now a provisional government building. The streets were filled with people celebrating, mourning, arguing about the future. The chaos of transition. I found a small apartment in a lower level, using some of my repatriation credits. Got a job doing communications work for a civilian contractor. They needed people with technical experience and didn't ask too many questions about where I'd worked before. The pay was adequate. The work was boring but honest. I existed, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About all of it. The people I'd known in the rebellion, most of them dead now. The prisoners I'd shared cells with, scattered or gone. The rebels I'd helped the Empire capture during my rehabilitation. All of the small choices and compromises and acts of survival that had led me here, to a tiny apartment on Coruscant, doing civilian work while the galaxy rebuilt around me. Sometimes I'd go to the memorial sites that were springing up across the city, walls covered with names of people killed during the war. I'd search for the names I remembered. My training officer from the rebellion, the friends who died at Gorman, the rebels I'd helped capture. Most weren't listed. The databases were incomplete, would probably always be incomplete. Too many people had died or disappeared for any memorial to hold them all. I met others like me sometimes. Former rebels who'd been captured and broken. Former Imperial workers who'd been complicit in atrocities. All of us carrying variations of the same guilt, the same questions about whether survival was worth what it cost. We didn't talk much about it. What was there to say? We'd all made choices we couldn't unmake, all lived through things that changed us permanently. One day, maybe 6 months after my release, I was walking through a market district when I saw her. Kessa. The medic from Wabani who'd shared my detention cell for years. She was thinner than I remembered, Greer, but unmistakably her. Kessa, I said, approaching carefully. She turned, and for a moment didn't recognize me. Then something shifted in her expression. 8742, she said, using my old prisoner designation. A small smile. You made it out. So did you. When? 2 months ago. They just opened the cells one day and told everyone to leave. No explanation, no processing. Just leave. She laughed quietly. I walked out of that building expecting to be shot. Took me 3 days to believe it was real. We found a small cafe and sat, drinking synthesized caf that tasted like chemicals and freedom. She told me about her release, her work now helping refugees resettle. I told her about the labor facility, about the years of counting days. Do you ever wonder if it was worth it? She asked. The resistance, helping those refugees for me. Oh, joining the rebellion for you. We paid for it with years of our lives. Torture, imprisonment. We were broken and used and discarded. And the empire fell anyway. Maybe would have fallen without any of us. I don't know, I said honestly. I think about it constantly. Whether my small acts of defiance mattered against something so vast. Whether I should have just kept my head down, survived quietly. But then I remember how it felt to do nothing while Gorman happened. That was a different kind of death. That was a different kind of death. So we chose this death instead, Kessa said. The slow kind. The kind that takes years. We sat in silence for a while, watching people pass on the street. Celebration and mourning mixed together. Joy and grief. The messy reality of a war's end. I'm glad you survived, I said finally. I'm glad you did too, even if survival feels complicated. We exchanged contact information, promised to meet again, knowing we probably wouldn't. Some connections are too painful to maintain, too heavy with shared memory. But it helped, knowing she was alive, knowing someone else understood. I continued working, continued existing in my small apartment. The months became a year, then 2. The new republic solidified established institutions, began the massive task of governing a galaxy that had been ruled by fear for decades. Some things improved. Yet, others stayed the same, just with different insignias. I never stopped thinking about the people I'd betrayed during my rehabilitation. Never stopped seeing their faces in my imagination during the long nights, when sleep wouldn't come. The Empire had taught me to rationalize, to compartmentalize, to survive through compromise. But it hadn't taught me to forgive myself. That was something I'd have to figure out on my own, if it was even possible. Sometimes I'd go back to the Black Tower, now converted into offices and archives. I'd stand outside, looking up at its enormous facade, remembering the cells inside, remembering Ven and Dala and Toll, remembering the years of waiting, the slow erosion of hope. The building looked different now, less threatening, just another structure in a city full of them. But I could still feel its weight, still hear the hum of its systems, still smell the recycled air. This is what the Empire did, not just to rebels or dissidents, but to everyone it touched. It broke people carefully, systematically, turned them into instruments of their own oppression. It made soldiers kill civilians, made technicians betray their allies, made medics watch people die without helping. It took the normal human instinct for survival and weaponized it, made compliance the only rational choice. And even after it fell, even after the Emperor was dead and the regime collapsed, that breaking remained. All of us who'd survived carried it inside us. The guilt, the compromise, the knowledge of what we'd done to stay alive. The Empire was gone, but its architecture remained in how we thought, how we saw ourselves, how we moved through the world. I still work in communications. Still live in my small apartment. Still exist in this strange peace that doesn't feel entirely real. The war is over, they say. The Empire is defeated. But I can still hear that hum, that low mechanical thrumming that came from the walls of every Imperial facility I was in. It's in my head now, permanent. A reminder of what I survived, and what it cost. Sometimes people ask me what it was like, being a prisoner of the Empire. They want stories, details, the kind of dramatic narrative that makes sense of suffering. I tell them about the cells and the interrogations and the labor facility. But I can't explain the real horror of it, not the pain, but the patience. The way they took years of your life and made them vanish into routine. The way they convinced you to participate in your own destruction. The way they made survival feel like betrayal. You could escape the cells. Eventually, if you lived long enough, the war would end and the doors would open. But you couldn't escape what they built inside you. The careful architecture of shame and rationalization and complicity. That remains long after the physical prisons are empty. This is how the Empire treated its prisoners. Not with quick executions or dramatic tortures, though those happen too, but with time. With patience. With the slow grinding pressure of a system so vast and indifferent that your suffering became just data. Your resistance became just a problem to be solved. Your entire life became just another case file, waiting for a decision that might never come. I survived it. But survival doesn't mean escape. It means carrying the weight of it forward, trying to figure out how to live with what you've done, and what was done to you. It means waking up each day in a galaxy that's moved on, while you're still trapped in those cells, still hearing that hum, still counting days that have already passed. The Empire is gone, but I'm still its prisoner in all the ways that matter. And I think I always will be. I can still hear my own breathing sometimes, amplified by memory until it's the only sound in the universe. That's what stays with me most. Not the screams, or the torture, or the years. Just the sound of air moving in and out of my lungs, proof that I still exist. That I survived. That I'm still here, carrying this weight, wondering if survival was worth what it cost. Wondering if anyone else remembers. Wondering if it mattered at all. The hum continues. It always continues. And I breathe. Because that's what prisoners do. We breathe, and we remember, and we carry the machinery of our breaking forward into whatever comes next. This is my testimony, my confession, the truth of what the Empire does to people who resist it, who serve it, who simply exist within its reach. We disappear, not always physically, but in all the ways that matter, we vanish into the system. Processed and cataloged and stored away, until we become just numbers in a database, just cases pending review, just broken pieces of something that once believed it could make a difference. I believed once. I fought. I was captured. I was broken. I complied. I survived. And now I'm here, telling you this, hoping someone will hear it and understand. The Empire is gone. The Empire is gone. But what it did to us remains. And that, perhaps, is its final victory.